Qualities Needed to Reconnect with Family, Episode 9, Integrity, part of the series Conflict Resolution Insights from Brett Lovett's The Compassion Project and FamilyReconcile.com. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hi, everyone. This is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator working throughout Florida and Texas.
And I am Natalia Łowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
Hello, and I'm Brett Lovett, and I'm the founder of Family Reconcile.
All right, so we are back with a topic regarding integrity. This is quality number 9 out of the 10 qualities that we're going through with Brett Lovett. And just to recap, we have gone through the qualities called deference, apologizing, forgiveness, vulnerability, sincerity, humility, kindness, and gratitude. And so these prior 8 were done to bring us now to number 9, where we're going to discuss integrity with Brett and just get his insights on how this quality can help our relationships thrive, whether it's a relationship between couples or relationship between children and their parents, or interfamily relationships between siblings, or whether that relationship is being tested in a counselor's room or at a mediation setting. But we all want healthy relationships and to resolve our conflicts, especially after COVID, which was the big drive that pushed us to want to do the series, because after COVID, a whole lot of people want to rekindle their relationships and get them back to square one after all of the loss that we had experienced in 2020 and 2021. So, Brett, as typically the way we start is for you to give us a definition of what we're talking about today. So what is the definition of integrity?
Yeah, if you look integrity up, you're going to see a couple definitions. This is the one I liked. I liked integrity being doing the right thing in a reliable way.
Doing the right thing in a reliable way. All right. Give us a little bit more, and let Natalia take over to ask some questions.
Yeah, sure. You know, as I was putting the program together, I thought I came across some research done by a researcher out of the Gottman Institute by the name of Nate Bagley. And they did an interesting study, and it was a coast-to-coast study. So they went from one coast to the other coast here in the United States, interacting with all kinds of people in different relationships, family relationships, interpersonal relationships. And what they were trying to put together was what's the key, or what are the keys to a quote unquote successful relationship. And a lot of what he wrote about is a lot of what they came across in the information that they were gathering was what the institute they work for and the founder, Dr. Gottman, had already come up with in previous research. And that was that the keys to successful relationships are a deep friendship, being fond and kind, both in word and in deed, being influenced, meaning being influential on others, but also allowing yourself to be influenced, kindness, and these types of things. So here was the interesting thing that Bagley mentioned, is he goes, in all the people that we talked to, most of them, they knew that these were the keys to a quote unquote successful or thriving relationship. But many of them, most of them, did not have that in their relationship. So his logical next question was, why? And he boiled it down, in his words, to one thing, and that was integrity, or lack of integrity was the key factor for why they didn't have what they knew would cause cause a relationship to be successful. Sorry, go ahead.
So once we know what the definition is and what the studies show, can you give us a practical example of how integrity can work and how lack of integrity can actually be harmful to relationships?
Yeah. So Nate Bagley said he kind of took a different spin on the integrity definition that I gave you, and he said integrity is doing what you say you will do. Okay, integrity is doing what you say you will do. So most relationships suffer. Most relationships suffer because we don't do what we say we're going to do. Right. So we make commitments to ourselves, and you can tell me what you think of this. We make commitments to ourselves all the time, don't we? We make commitments to others often. And then often we break those commitments. And then what happens? What do we kind of naturally do? Whether it's based out of selfishness or pride, we start looking for excuses, right? We excuse or we find we have a whole list of reasons of why we didn't do what we were supposed to do. So that's key to integrity is doing what you say we will do. Now, we also should note at this point that we all fail in this. So this isn't like, well, you know, nobody ever fails. The key is integrity is about trying to do what you say you will do, but it's also about when we fail to do what we say we are going to do. It's how we own that. And that kind of
Okay, so
ties.
Brett, so does it really mean that it is about being consistent and keeping your word?
It's
Or is
part.
it more than that?
I think it's overall more than that, but that's a main factor in being consistent with keeping your word, being consistent with if you say you're going to do something, if you make a commitment to do something, then yes, consistency should be a part of that. If we're not consistent, then there should be other factors as to why. There's probably other factors involved as to why we're not being consistent.
So tell us, please, is it being consistent, being in integrity with what we have promised, with what we were supposed to do at all cost? So is it a value in integrity that we will be consistent, we'll keep our word
Yeah, that's a really good
all
question.
cost?
My personal opinion is that it is. It's a value. It's a quality. It's if we're consistent at it, yes, this is at all costs. Well, I mean that's a personal decision, right? I can't say you need to be show integrity at all costs. I can't answer that for somebody else, but I can answer it for myself. There's a well-known psychologist, Dr. Ben Hardy, and he had this expression. He said, do the right thing, always do the right thing, always try to do the right thing, and let the consequences follow. If you just think about that expression for a while, I mean, that really resonated with me. It may not resonate as deeply with everyone else, but think about what he's saying there. He's saying, always do the right thing and let the consequences follow, meaning those consequences may not always be wonderful. We may do the right thing and actually suffer to some degree for whatever it is that we did. So now it becomes about us personally. What is our, where do we stand morally? Where do we stand internally? That will allow us to either follow through with something like that, and that goes to integrity. It goes to our integrity. So there are levels, and I think that quote from him really highlights that.
Yeah, and I think that when we look at integrity, you've been talking about it from the perspective of you doing the right thing and you standing consistent. But then what does that build into the receiver, right? Does it build, does it create trust? Does it create the feeling in that person that, wow, I can trust you because you are consistent and you're reliable? And so therefore that's really what I guess what I'm interested in is that the real value, the real takeaway from all of this. And that if we do the right thing reliably over and over and over again, we're consistent, is that then going to produce the result? Because sometimes maybe it won't. People are scared that, well, if I expose myself and do it, it may not get the response that I want. but anyway, can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think you said it really well, Mac, too. And I like you actually highlighted another quality there, and I'll come back to that. There are benefits to yourself, as you mentioned, and yes, there are benefits to others. You mentioned it, and then there are multiple benefits. But integrity, when you're a person of integrity consistently, not a perfect person, right? We're not. There's a difference, When you're a person of integrity consistently, you are building trust in others. So to answer your question, yes, you're fine tuning yourself and being the best version of yourself that you can be. That's why we're discussing these qualities. Why are we discussing these qualities? All the ones that you talked about at the beginning, all the ones that we've talked about in the previous weeks, because we're trying to be the best version of ourselves that we can be first. And then what does that foster in others? Well, in this case, integrity fosters trust. And when you can foster trust, now you've laid the foundation by which you can build a relationship on.
So that brings me to the point where I want to ask you, what happens then if we fail on this quality? If we
That
fall short of integrity, what happens? How to act, how to behave?
So the first thing that I think we should all acknowledge is that we all fail, right? Does anybody know anybody that doesn't fail? If you ask people about me, they'll probably tell you he fails the most, right? So, I mean, I have and I would concur. I've set out on commitments and I haven't met those commitments, or I've fallen short in areas. So here's the difference. The difference, and hopefully this comes clear in the program here. So we're not trying to be perfect. The difference is when we do fail, when we do fall short, right, of the standard of integrity, it's the difference between those who will allow that to destroy the relationship, right, or to destroy the relationships, and the difference between those who will own it, right, and then recover from it and actually go on to thrive in the relationships. That's the difference. So it's not about, I failed. It's about what we do if we fail. So integrity is all encompassing. It's following through and being consistent, but also you're being a person of integrity when you do fail, and how you own it and move forward, or how you recover from that is being is part of integrity.
So what about how this works with forgiveness? Because in my head, I'm thinking, if you fail and you own it, to a degree, maybe
Maybe
point.
apology goes first. So, if from our perspective, when you
Yeah.
fail, is it then intersecting with apologizing, and
Uh,
only then with the reaction of other people being the forgiveness?
Right, great point. And you see, you just highlighted why we do this program is you used a great word there, Natalia. You used intersecting. It absolutely intersects. So we're talking about here. Let me give you an example. We're talking about integrity, and then I use the phrase that we've all heard: "You own it." Somebody listening to us right now might be saying, "Well, that sounds good, but okay, how do I own it?" Okay, so I want to be a person of integrity, and I failed, and now you're telling me to own it. Well, how do I do that? Some people don't know how to own it. Would you agree? They don't know how to own when they fail to live up to something, right? Because they start looking at all the personal, this means, they look at their character, like people are going to think I'm bad, and they're going to think I'm, and we get all off sidetracked on that. So how do you own it? This is where it intersects with apology. If you failed in a commitment, if you failed to live up to do the best thing in a reliable way, okay, could be in your relationship with your spouse, you failed to do something. It could be your relationship with your neighbor. It could be a relationship in the workplace, right? You had a task or an assignment you failed that you committed to, and you didn't deliver on it, so you failed it. So it doesn't matter what the context is. How do you own it? The first thing you can do is, likely, if you failed in some sort of measure, isn't an apology going to likely be, as you brought out, Natalia, isn't that going to likely be somewhere in the process? I would imagine it would be. Okay, so This is how we demonstrate how we own it. We go back to what we discussed in that program. We discussed 3 ways for making an apology. You accept responsibility, right? Was the number one thing. Number two was you don't deflect to somewhere else or to an excuse. And then the third was to make amends. So we show that we own it by doing that first step. We apologize by saying, I'm sorry. But remember what we said? We said, how do we really show that we accept responsibility? It's not by just saying, I'm sorry. It's by saying, I'm sorry, and then stating specifically what it is that we did. I am sorry when I said this thing to you that I should, when I said these words. I am sorry when I did this specific thing to you. I am sorry when I didn't meet this specific obligation. That's how we accept. That's how we show that we own it. So that's what I'm saying is, if we look, I'm hoping that somebody looks at this and they say, okay, this is integrity. Maybe this is an area where I can work at when I look at my relationships. Oh, but I see how it ties into apology. So hopefully they go back to apology and look. They all tie into one another. I've said that into all the programs that we've had, and you brought out in a wonderful way how that works. So we're talking about integrity, but integrity certainly can intersect with apology and help us to see how we own something.
And following on that further, I wanted to make another specific point, because we are talking about integrity in terms of how other people see us, because it builds trust. But what you've just been saying brings me a thought that it's also about the integrity of us ourselves, because this is also how I make peace with myself when I failed, by trying to move forward out of my failure, out of breaking my word, and working with someone together in this relationship.
Lack of integrity erodes or eats away at every good thing that's necessary for relationship building. Lack of it eats away at it. So, we're not just talking about a quality. We're talking about it. We're talking about a fundamental key quality to relationship building. And it doesn't matter where that relationship is. We talk about reconnecting with family, but this could be in a formal mediation setting as well, too. How does a mediator lay the groundwork for when you go into a mediation setting, most people, they're here's a byproduct of a lack of integrity. You can tell me what you think on this. Is we rally people around us, we get people to support us, to support our side, and they cheer us on, right? But they may be cheering us on from avoiding responsibility. They may be cheering us on from they may be cheering on a false sense of pride or rightness. Have you seen that in mediations? I know I have. So even as mediators, we need to be careful with how we can help people understand a better way, because we're trying to show a better way by means of these qualities. So, how do we do that? Well, we do that by owning. If we've made a mistake or we've not lived up to something, how do we do it? We own it. And we've already discussed how we own it. It might involve an apology. And then we already discussed how we say those apologies so that it comes across sincere. So we don't make excuses. We don't come up with reasons why we can't. We don't blame others, which are all factors we see in regular relationships and in formal mediations. We see it. All of that is always the same. So we have to be the barometer. We have to be that lighthouse that is pointing, hey, there's a shipwreck going to happen over here if we keep going in this direction. So we need to redirect this way. This is what separates integrity, you guys, is what separates the average relationship from an amazing relationship.
Thank you, Brad. As we start wrapping up, let's turn to look at it from the perspective of the person who can do the forgiving when somebody else fails to do the right thing reliably. Okay. Natalia and I, being predominantly family law attorneys, we are used to seeing parties, whether we represent a parent or child or a husband or a wife. We're used to seeing relationships at the brink where they are ending because one party says, because they're hurt, they'll say something to the effect, he doesn't keep his word. Or I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a child support case. The parents have been working together for years, but he is inconsistent and he's not reliable and he doesn't help her as she wants. And so she decides that's it. I'm taking you to, whatever state agency to now go bring him to court to do a formal order. And I've heard this before so many times where the reason for that decision by her is because the guy is inconsistent. Like when he gets mad at me, he stops giving me money. Okay, that comes up all the time, and then, and so she has justification, she has a rational reason for doing what she's doing. Okay, and he might get hurt because he might feel like, well, he doesn't trust me. Okay, so could you speak to her, to that person for a minute about, okay, well, where do you draw the line to decide, okay, forgiveness is proper. Let me go ahead and give in and accept that you've made your change, or where do you say, no, you know what, you're always gonna be like that. We're always gonna keep having these problems, and you haven't changed. You keep saying you will, but anyway, can you speak to that person, the receiver?
Yeah, I'll try not to drag this out. That's a really good. I really liked how you laid that out. And let me try not to drag an answer out there. What I see in that, as you were saying that, explaining that, what I see in that is a lot of emotion, a lot of emotional reaction, right? Because it's a tax on our character. So he's, I'm not going to pay. So he's weaponizing, right? He's weaponizing a commitment. It's just a commitment. Okay, but she weaponizes the commitment, and then she takes that personal, right? She takes that as an attack on her, and so her emotional response is that's it, or and so there's a lot of emotion in there. If we can somehow help her kind of step away from the emotion just for a moment, we're not telling her not to be emotional. We're not telling her not to be in touch with her feelings. We're just saying step away from the emotional aspect of it and what it may mean to your character. And let's just look at what integrity means in this. What's integrity? Integrity is doing what you say you will do, and it's doing the right thing in a reliable way. So are you being reliable? That's what I would ask her. Are you being reliable? Are you doing the right thing? And if so, then you're setting the table for the other party to do the right thing in a reliable way. So it depends. I've said this before. It depends on what she wants. I would ask her, what do you want? If you want to set the example and let somebody else follow, you obviously have that power to do that. Okay. So for me, I would try to get her to step away from the emotion and think a little bit more logically about what integrity means, because we're talking about her. She's there because she wants the best for her family. I would assume that, right? How do you get the best for your family? Well, you got to be a person of integrity. How are you going to be a person of integrity? You're going to, when it comes to these decisions and what we're going to do and how we're going to react, or if we're going to react at all, what our response is, all comes down to personal integrity. So I would just help her try to find out what that means for her. Okay. It means different things for each one of us, but I try to see what that means for her and see if that helps her kind of step away a little bit. Right. There's a Harvard professor talked about going to the balcony. So you're in a dispute. It's kind of, emotional. He goes, go up to the balcony and look down and see yourself from a different perspective. When we do that, we might foster integrity, set that example, and we might affect the other person in a positive way.
Thank you so much for that. And today that will be it on integrity. But we strongly recommend that all the listeners and viewers go back to our previous episodes to see how, again, it intersects with the sectional apology, on deference, on forgiveness, and all the other things that we've done together with Brett, as we are now heading for the 10th episode of our series, Qualities Needed to Reconnect with Family. That would be it from us for today. Stay tuned. Bye.
Bye-bye for now.